You are close enough now that one more step matters, and the animal in front of you has not registered you as a threat yet. Something is about to happen in your body that has nothing to do with courage and nothing to do with fear. It is a third thing entirely, and until fairly recently, almost no one could say exactly what it was made of. This episode is about what happens inside a body in the seconds before it commits to a hunt, and about a growing body of research that treats predatory behavior as its own distinct mode, run on its own circuitry, not a louder version of anger and not a quieter version of fear. And claws and a small number of species built entirely around killing. But almost every animal alive occupies both sides of that relationship at different points in its life, prey to something and predator to something else, and the switch between those two states is not a single dial. Fear has its own circuitry, extensively documented over the past several decades. Predatory pursuit, it turns out, has a separate one, and confusing the two, treating a hunting animal as though it must be experiencing some version of aggression or panic, has been a behavior. The mistake is understandable. From the outside, a hunting animal and a frightened one can both look intense, fast, and fully committed. The difference only becomes visible once you can see what is actually happening inside the nervous system doing the committing. Start with a 2017 study in the journal Cell. Researchers including Han, Tellez, and de Araujo were trying to locate exactly where in the mammalian brain predatory hunting lives. They focused on the associate almost entirely with fear. Using optogenetics and chemogenetics, tools that let researchers switch specific neurons on with light or with designer drugs delivered directly to that tissue, they activated that region in mice. The mice did not freeze. They did not flee. They attacked, pursuing live crickets and also pursuing objects that were not alive at all, sticks, bottle caps, rolled tape, anything shaped roughly like prey. The behavior split cleanly into two separate structure. One pathway ran down into the brainstem's reticular formation and controlled the precise coordination of jaw and neck muscles needed to land a bite in exactly the right place. A second, entirely separate pathway ran instead to the midbrain and controlled the pursuit itself, the decision to keep closing distance. And when the researchers looked for the signature of fear anywhere in this circuit, they came up empty. Stimulating it did not produce freezing, the defensive stillness that shows up when nearby regions of the same general structure are activated in a threat context instead. The predatory pathway and the fear pathway share a neighborhood in the brain. They are not the same road. This distinction is not new to 2017. It traces back decades earlier, to research most associated with the neuroscientist Flynn, who worked with cats through the 1960s and 1970s. Flynn and his collaborators found they could trigger two entirely different attack behaviors by stimulating different sites in a cat's hypothalamus. One came bundled with a visibly aroused body, hissing, an arched back, dilated pupils, the fur standing up along the spine. Researchers still call this effective attack, and it looks exactly like what a cornered, frightened animal is supposed to look like. The other looked nothing like it. In what the field still calls quiet biting attack, a stalking cat kept a low profile, stayed silent, showed no pupil dilation, no arched back, no piloerection, and used its ears for sound localization rather than scanning for danger. By this evidence, a predatory attack runs without the alarm signature at all. Not calm the way a resting animal is calm. Calm the way a stored, practiced sequence is calm. There is a reason a hunting system would be built this way instead of running on the same urgency as fear. A predator that hesitated, second-guessed, or flooded its own body with the alarm chemistry of panic every time it closed on something faster or better armed than itself would lose far more hunts than it won. Commitment has to arrive fast, and it has to arrive clean, without the noise of an emotional state fighting for the same nervous system in real time. A separate, quieter circuit happens alone in a predator that hunts in a group, and coordination raises an obvious question. If the moment of the hunt does not run on much deliberate thought, how do several animals avoid working against each other? Part of the answer comes from a 1992 study of African lions by the researcher Stander, who spent years identifying individual lionesses on the plains of Namibia and recorded 486 group hunts in detail. The hunts were not improvised fresh each time. Lionesses tended to occupy the same position as wing or center. Lionesses in wing positions did the stalking and usually opened the attack. Lionesses in center positions covered less ground and were more often the ones who made the actual capture, positioned to intercept prey breaking away from the wings. Hunts where most of the lionesses present held their habitual position had a distinctly higher rate of success than hunts where the group's usual arrangement broke down. The coordination was not negotiated fresh in the moment. It was already loaded in, a role each animal had learned and defaulted back into, hunt after hunt after hunt. None of this was rigid script following either. The same lionesses shifted their behavior with the composition of the group and with what the others around them were doing in that specific hunt, which is exactly what you would expect from a learned, practiced role rather than a fixed instinct with no room to adjust. None of this stayed confined to 4 legs and a tail. Something built on the same underlying pattern, patient tracking followed by a long, committed pursuit, shaped the human body too, and the evidence for it is written directly into human anatomy. In 2004, the biologists Dennis Bramble and Daniel Lieberman published a paper in the journal Nature making the case for endurance running as a real, load-bearing part of human evolution. Compared to almost any other mammal, humans are not fast. No healthy adult outruns an antelope in a short sprint. But across long distances, and especially in heat, the human body performs remarkably well, and Bramble and Lieberman traced a long list of skeletal features, in the legs, the feet, the ligaments, the way the head balances on the spine, that make sense only if early humans lived. Their conclusion, stated directly, is that endurance running is a derived capability of the genus Homo, originating about 2 million years ago, and that it may have been instrumental in the evolution of the human body form. 2 years later, the researcher Liebenberg documented the living version of the capability, still practiced by hunter-gatherers in the Kalahari who run healthy antelope down across the hottest part of the day until the animal collapses from exhaustion, a technique called persistence hunting. Liebenberg's own description and involves chasing an animal until it is run to exhaustion. It is nothing like a cheetah sprint, and it is not decided in the last few seconds. It is carried out by a body built, across roughly 2 million years, to keep going after almost anything else has to stop. None of the 4 cases here required the animal, or the human, to plan the encounter moment to moment. A mouse's brain routed pursuit and biting down 2 separate wires before the chase even started. A cat's hypothalamus had already sorted attack into a calm channel and an alarmed one, decades before anyone thought to ask why. A lioness walked onto the plain already knowing whether she was wing or center that day, in the way a person knows their position on a team without needing to be told again. And a human runner, deep into a chase across open ground in real heat, was relying on a skeleton shaped by 2 million years of ancestors who did the exact same thing before there was language to describe it. In every case, the decision that mattered most had already been made, long before the moment most people would call the decision. Put these findings next to each other and a pattern comes into focus. In a mouse, in a cat, in a pride of lions, and in the animal reading this sentence right now, hunting does not appear to run on the same machinery as fear, and it does not appear to run on real-time deliberation either. It runs on something narrower and more practiced, a dedicated circuit for the pursuit, a separate dedicated circuit for the strike, a role each hunter already knows how to occupy without discussion, and in the human case, a body quietly engineered across 2 million years for exactly this kind of long, committed chase. For of years of independent evolution, appear to have converged on a similar solution: keep the decisive action fast and take the fear out of it. None of this makes a human being today a predator in any simple sense, and none of it is offered as an excuse for anything. It describes hardware. It does not issue instructions. But the next time your body commits fully to something fast and decisive before your thoughts have caught up, a sudden return in a game, a fast pursuit, a physical response you never consciously chose, it is worth asking which system fear at all, or something older and considerably quieter than that. None of this is a suggestion that predatory circuitry explains everything difficult a person does under pressure, and it is not a diagnosis of anyone's behavior. It is a narrower claim than that. It says that at least one specific, fast, committed mode of acting in the world has old, well-documented, non-emotional roots, and that noticing the difference between that mode and a fear response might be the more honest place to start. Here is the question for the comments. Think of a moment your body moved before you decided anything, and fear was not what was driving it. What was it? I read these. And in the next episode, we look at the opposite of experience. An animal that has never met a human, has never once been threatened by one, and already knows exactly what to do the first time it sees one.